Hello, amazing souls out there. I hope you're able to get out in nature like Starlight was. And yes, what a beautiful day. Beautiful sun, a beautiful breeze. Starlight loves, sit in the shade somewhere. And anyway, I hope you're getting out in nature. Today is Saturday. What's your excuse why you can't get out in nature? You got the cold? Well, I'll tell you what, that could be an issue, because Starlight was cold. I mean, you get the cold and then you're cold. It's just like, it is kind of funny. So anyway, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're taking really good care of yourself. Watch out those germs out there. Let love guide you, not fear. But really, I'm telling you, a lot of sneezing, coughing, sniffling, and all that stuff in this area, germs, 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 germs. But anyway, hand sanitizer comes in handy. Washing hands is a good thing to do. I am big on cleaning as long as there's soap and water available. Sometimes I got to use other white things to use or hand sanitizer. So anyway, I love you all. And if you are new to my YouTube channel, welcome. And you could find me on YouTube, and that is at Starlight, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman. Plus, you could give my videos a thumbs up, and you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. Plus, you could leave Starlight a message down below, beep, beep, beep. And you can also share my videos with your family, your friends. A little baby snapping turtle, yes. And I think I deleted it off my phone, but a little caterpillar, because I did make a cool video of a cool looking caterpillar. And also, you could check out my playlist and find me on Instagram at 1995 Starlight, or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman Starlight. So here I am. And before I start, though, I want to say a big, huge thank you to all of you. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of my YouTube channel, being a part of this family. That's what we are, whether you like it or not. So thank you for all of you who have been here from the beginning, even before I started YouTube. Yeah, Starlight was already doing stuff on Facebook before I started YouTube. And thank you for loving and supporting Starlight. Thank you for the thumbs up, your messages, or even sharing my videos. Thank you, or those of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. So today, wow, this is going to be an interesting topic. Now, I do have this on my playlist, so you might want to check these other ones out. So there are people out there that are going to go through this, and I'm not sure if everyone is going to go through this through their lifetime, or maybe another time when they come back here. But there's people that have spiritual awakenings. Woo! Talk about going for a freaking ride. You want to go for a ride? Starlight's driving. Has any of you, now some of you might have gone through something throughout your time. It could have happened at a very young age. This stuff can happen, who knows how young, for kids, boys or girls, and a lot of Hollywood stars out there go through this. That's why sometimes you might read, on the first, that they want to spread gossip out, and lies about people. There's a lot of those Hollywood stars out there, whether you know this or not, whether you believe this or not, that's up to you. But I never, I wanted to be a Hollywood star when I was like 15, but man, that turned around quick when I started, I didn't read very well, but when I seen their magazines all over plastered in the stores, and how they were taught, spreading stuff about them, talking nasty about those people. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about being a Hollywood star anymore, because that's what they're doing, that to all these people out there. They're going to do that to me. What if I went swimming at an ocean somewhere, and somebody's like, haha, look at her body. Let's laugh at Starlight's body and put her on the front cover of the magazine for Hollywood. Really? Grow up. Really, grow up. Really. I'm like so my heart, it's a shame that these people go through what they go through. And so, no, I'm good on the Hollywood stars, but the Hollywood stars, the ones, there are some that when they, if they join this group that got them the stars that they are, I believe Michael Jackson was one of those people that they had like these people that they might look for you, hunt you down, and discover you, and then, or you might go to them somehow or another, and people might send you their way, and get you to be a Hollywood star. And certain birthdays and stuff like that, or certain signs that they target people. They know who they're looking for, and they know a lot about us, even more than we know about ourselves. Sorry, Starlight's back is really aching here. So those Hollywood stars, a lot of them, when they sign those contracts to be either the actor or whatever they do, a singer, there's stuff they sign to and they might not even really know what it is, in the little fine print, the stuff that we do and we don't even think anything of it. And Starlight is guilty, is, wanting to have apps on her phone and not reading, the agreement stuff, or all kinds of stuff, oh, yeah, really, I gotta read. I mean, like, how long is it, and it's tiny little writing. Yeah, well, those Hollywood stars out there, there's a lot of reading to do, to sign up. And if they don't have a lawyer to explain what all this means and what it says and all that stuff, a lot of them sign their souls to the devil, and that's what makes them, they sold their souls to be the stars that they are today. And they some of those people went through horrible stuff. They had to do certain crazy ass stuff out there, like how there's that stupid candy bar, like what would you do for a Klondike bar, or like long time ago, Starlight used to get into this stuff, is people did a lot of crazy stuff to, like, what would you do to get money? There's a lot of people out there doing a lot of crazy stuff to get money. So, and that is pretty much with the Hollywood stars is, hey, are you willing to do this? And I wouldn't doubt that stuff is like recorded somehow or another so they can use it against that person. Like, hey, we'll let everybody know what you did. We're going to broadcast it out there, or we'll make up something crazy on you. You got to do what we want you to do. And you want to be that star. You want to be famous, and those people, it's a outward show. It's not that just because they look happy, in the magazines, it's all an act. Everything is an act. They could have a lot of money and have all the fame that they thought they wanted, but, they sign that contract. That means if, they want you to sing tonight, you're singing tonight, so it would be very tough to do that. I know. And I'm so grateful that God stopped me from ever, going that way. I believed my brother and I would have been great together as a team. My one brother, as far as like, if we worked together when we were younger, is that we could have been like a brother sister, kind of, singing and dancing stuff. But of course that never did happen. And I'm grateful that it never did. I'm grateful that God had other better plans for me. And that is a part of what I'm doing here. These are I don't have to go to bed with guilt in my mind. But anyway, those Hollywood stars, the reason why I'm mentioning those people, these people, some of them, they had to do some strange things out there, and the people that are in charge of the world and all that, they know that because throughout history and, there's been a lot of people throughout history that has gone through, a horrible childhood, just like Starlight. They've gone through horrible things. This could have happened to, all different horrible things. Like a boy could have gone through some horrible stuff, growing up, or even teenage years, or even young adults, or any time throughout the year. And so they know when horrible stuff happens to people, strange things can happen to them, and with no sign that it's going to happen. that they can go through a spiritual awakening, and that is the case for Starlight. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that this whole matrix shit here, that's what it is. It's, we're in a stimulation, a matrix. And the problem is that, there's a lot of, we're all actors and actresses and actors out here in this 3D matrix reality. And the thing with this is that, with this matrix, is that we're all actors, and you're like, Starlight, what are you talking about? The cops are actors. If you've ever seen shit going on, they are trained to to act. They are actors. Doctors are actors. There's a whole lot of people in the hospital. They won't give you information. They want to study you and see what you know. So ignorance is not bliss, like a lot of people think out in the world. There's people out there that don't want to know anything. They don't want to know the truth. They rather believe a lie than the truth. Well, you're going to have a rude awakening later on when shit hits the fan. And so the Hollywood stars, there's been actors and actresses out there that, bam, something happened. They just, because they got them to do all these horrible stuff, and there's people that know these things, and it's nothing that I can prove. It's whether you believe it or not. So it's been a study, is like, hey, if horrible stuff happens to people, then they're going to have this like spiritual awakening, that because all these things, like, and that's what happened to Starlight. But doctors will put a label. They're always labeling everything, there's a lot of people, you might know a relative, you might know somebody in your family. This person might be you. You might have gone through this, and your doctor gave you a label and slapped you, and then now you're in the system. Now, like, anytime, like, when it comes to the law or anything like that, or hospitals or the police department, bam, now you got this label, especially if you had to go into the ER or a hospital, or those special hospitals out there. Do you guys know what those special hospitals are? They got these other hospitals. Now, how does Starlight know this? I've been in those special hospitals, and I'll tell you what, it's crazy what goes on in those hospitals, and so they send you in those sometimes it's a little backwards. They might send you into a regular hospital that normally people, well, I'm not normal, so Starlight is not normal. They would put people into a regular hospital that normally everyone would go to, but sometimes they will send a person that's going through a spiritual awakening into one of those hospitals, because then they're going to do maybe a blood test, make sure they're not on any drugs, what got them in there in the first place. Like if a police officer picked you up for something and you don't know what the hell happened, and you're like, what the heck? What the heck happened? I wasn't even on any drugs. I might have smoked some marijuana. There's times that you might not even done any marijuana. It's because your past, you could have gone through childhood abuse, throughout your whole entire childhood, your whole entire, like, just shit happened all the time to you. And then it's almost like, do you know what I gotta think, pressure cooker is? Starlight used to use, those things are dangerous, I'll tell you what. A pressure cooker is, it reminds me of what happened to me it's not that I'm going crazy, I'm just waking up. That, okay, guys, okay, I know, I can hear what you're saying. What? So anyway, a pressure cooker, we used to do, when I used to eat chicken, it was a quick way of cooking things up. We used to make porcupines, imagine that. Not real porcupines out in the woods. No, Starlight did not eat porcupines, but I used to make porcupines in a pressure cooker, and it was such a delicious meal at those days when I used to make it. And by the time you get done with it, they look like little porcupines. But you could cook up chicken really fast, or do like a quick soup in a pressure cooker. And what it is a regular size saucepan, and it has a special lid that forms out to the on top of the pan, and the handle, it will have a handle connected to the top, and then it will have a seal, these snap things that go around the side to seal. It seals the pan, so then when you turn the stove on, when you have the water in there and all the food in there or whatever, that when you turn it on, and you have to have it on for so long, and so it will keep all the heat inside. No steam will come outside of that pressure cooker. And when it gets done, there's a little thing on the top, and it has like little holes in it, like might be have 4 holes, and you screw it on the top. Well, when that baby gets hot and when it's ready to open up, that thing will, like, I think it will spin around, and it will make a whistle, like sound like a teapot, and then you'll know, oh, it's done, because it's bubbling up and all that or whatever. So you don't ever want to open one of those right away. Believe me, you do not want to open them up. Warning, do not open those up right away. And once it cools down a little bit, there's a kind of, you got to kind of figure out how long you got to let it sit before you unhook the seal things that's on the outside of the pan. And because I'll tell you what, if you open that lid up before the time, you're going to have a heck of a mess. So, it would probably throw that pan right off, it blew its top. So that's about what happened with Starlet when she had her spiritual awakening, is that, you only can handle so much hell, and it was one thing after another after, when I was in my mom's womb, after I got out of my mom's womb, it just, one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, after another, after another, from, birth all the way up until 2016. And I'll tell you what, that is what I believe what happened. And I'll tell you what, shit is gonna, when you think, what the heck, there's going to be some crazy thing that you went through or experienced, and somebody might have had to call 911. More than likely, you didn't have to call 911, because things happen. You end up, finding out that you got more power than you really believe. But the doctor's going to give you a label, and he's going to put this label on you. So then, the rest of your time, you're going to be having all these labels, on you, like this is, there's people that get called schizophrenia, bipolar, what is the new name that schizophrenia, all these names, and then there's all these labels, that they put on people, and there's times, even in our lives, sometimes what we do is we try to force things to fit. Even the police department does that. The hospitals might do that. Scientists will do that. Where they want to prove their case about something, so they force things to fit. And that's what the doctors do, is that even though things don't line up, I never agreed with my doctors on any of the labels that they gave me. They couldn't even make up their mind of what they were going to label me. It was a spiritual awakening. It wasn't all these labels that they were giving me. So you got to really be careful of the kind of labels like a doctor gives you, because, they are trained, and they are being run by the government. A good 99.99% of them are, is because that's where they're going to get their funds from. That's where they're going to get the money, and all these people, all these companies, they're all helping each other out, with medications and all these things. But a spiritual awakening is when, you're going to be Alice in the Wonderland going, down that rabbit hole, and you're going to go through some crazy stuff. And your doctor's going to say, oh, you know what? You got bipolar or grand, I don't know. There's all these mania. There's those names too. There's all kinds of names of titles that they have. And, so have you ever had a spiritual awakening? A spiritual awakening, which it means that you're waking up. It's not that you're crazy. And everybody takes their spiritual awakening different. Mine was so bizarre, and I got my stories on my YouTube channel. You can always check those out, because if you went through some kind of strange thing, and and you can't, once you go through one, you cannot get that off your mind. It's like, holy shit, what just happened? Like I was doing this stuff, and I was psychic. I knew stuff. I was God. I was, I was strong. It's that we have power within us, but they've been keeping us low. They've been taking our power away, and there's so many programs out there that we've been programmed. There's a movie, and it's called Paycheck. I always kind of go to this movie, but Paycheck was where this man signed a deal, and he but what it is that when it be, I don't know exactly how he did this, but he set everything up ahead of time. I think after he had to take an injection, I believe, and then that injection, got him to do stuff that that was the part of the deal, is that he would not know what he did, but they went over the line and they got him doing stuff that was against what he would have done. And then later on in the movie, he went to go get paid for that job after, things, the job was supposed to be done, and he couldn't remember, what happened. And so, but there was no paycheck. But what he did is really smart, is that he put an envelope, and he had a way of getting it. There was an envelope and it had all these things in it. And those were ways for him to figure out what happened. And he did this because he would eventually understand what all these things were used for, to figure out how he was going to get that paycheck. So it was a really cool movie. I really love that. And the actor wasn't one of my favorite actors, but that movie really kind of made me feel like going through a spiritual awakening, how things go, because I had experiences on my spiritual awakening where my daughter was a witness. My daughter and I both went through a spiritual awakening together, and like I said, not everybody handles those the same way. Me, I was so freaking blown away in it. I was mind blown big time. I was getting codes. That's where my numbers were coming in, is when I started getting numbers. I thought they were codes. And, I remember I didn't even realize I was going through a spiritual awakening. They can actually just gradually happen where things are starting to stand out to you, kind of like somebody's taken a magnifying glass, and things that are right in front of your face that you never seen before, but now you're noticing things, now you're getting signs, and it's always been there in front of your face, but you never noticed it before. And that's about what it is like, waking up to understand there's more to life than what we've been told. There's a whole lot going on in this reality here, and that's why we are in the stimulation. And if you never gone through that, or you might have gone through a spiritual awakening, wondering what the blank happened to me, what's wrong with me, why did all this crazy ass shit? Everybody has their own stories, of their spiritual awakening, and I remember even when I did LSD when I was younger, it kind of reminds me of a spiritual awakening, is that I did LSD, and I just was telling somebody about this not too long ago, explaining them. I told this for a reason, is just like when I was going through it in spiritual awakening, was the same kind of thing that happened when I did LSD, is I didn't turn into, but as I was tripping on LSD with my brother that's no longer here, there was a pack of Camel cigarettes. And before you know it, I'm sitting there talking to my brother, and he's a Camel from Camel Joe, on a pack of cigarettes. Well, that is kind of like the same similarities that can happen depending on how your spiritual awakening was, if you had one or not, where, you might get codes and signs and information, downloads, and all this crazy stuff that, you might not even be aware of these things that are popping out at you. Like, for instance, I know I'm supposed to only be so long on this video, but my daughter and I were at her house, and I got to do this really quick if I can pull this off. Starlight is out there. But this is my library card from another library, but let me see if I can do this really quick here. I have to have the table. So the funny thing is that my daughter, I didn't know, I don't even know, it's just because I'm going through a spiritual awakening. These are the kind of things. There was a card that my daughter, at her husband's house, or their house at the time, that was on their table, and it had, little squares around the whole edge of this square, a card, and it had a letter E, and each square had a different number in there. Well, I didn't know that was a code. That was information for me to understand what was going to happen soon. This was going to happen soon. It was just a card laying there. But as crazy as I might be telling you this, the card was sitting at the edge of the table, and I would have never noticed it, but this is the crazy stuff that goes on or could go on through a spiritual awakening. And I just happened to, I don't know if it's going to happen. I got to do this. Whoops. Hang on. So this is what a spiritual awakening, you can go through this on a spiritual awakening. At least this is my story. My daughter remembers it because, we got codes, things were like standing out, and so somehow or another I accidentally, without myself hitting the table, went like this, and just like that card landed on the chair, and then it went boom, and I'm like, and so I'm going through this spiritual awakening, and I'm like, what the heck? Right now I'm just seeing if there's something that would, for instance, like this card has a moon, and it has a little astronaut reading a book. So now with that picture, just like doing LSD, that could be some kind of code for me, seeing an astronaut. And I might not understand it right at that time, but, as you're going through a spiritual awakening, bam, something will trigger, and that picture of the moon will be like, you won't realize it until, it might take after you get done with your spiritual awakening. When you go through something like that, it might not hit you until later on, but when that card at my daughter's house, in her husband's house, flipped over, and then I got to see, I knew it was a code. So with that card that flipped up in the air and landed on the seat, it had a bunch of little squares around, and each one had numbers, and it had a letter E in there. Well, guess what? Like about 3 or 4 days later, Starlight got sent to a psych hospital, and it was where they had all the it was a building where they had all the psych units, and E was the building that I ended up going into, and there was a number, so there's numbers for that building, and so it was letting me know ahead of time, which I didn't understand until later on, is building E that is where I ended up going later on for the psych unit at the hospital. So that was a code to let me know, a sign to let me know, that was going to happen later on, but I didn't understand it until after I got into the hospital, and it was months later, because it did shock me, all the things that happened through that spiritual awakening, which is on my YouTube channel, through Spiritual Awakening. So to understand what did happen to Starlight on her spiritual awakening, you would have to check out my playlist on spiritual awakenings. And I'm not sure what title I would have had on that particular story, because that would have been my first spiritual awakening that I did have, because things triggered Starlight to have that happen. And my story, true story, is on my YouTube channel. And then other strange things were happening, like there was an arrow on something, and it might have been on that card or something in my daughter's house. And it was kind of weird because my daughter was going through a spiritual awakening at the same time. We thought the doors were all locked in my daughter's house, and she was going through some strange things with her neighbor during this time. So we wanted to make sure the doors were locked because her neighbor, was giving her a hard time. And so things were triggering, things, codes and signs were standing out to let us know. And somehow or another, there was some kind of arrow, and we're like, oh my, there's an arrow. Well, where's the arrow pointing? And we looked at the arrow, and it was pointing at my daughter's door. And we're like, why is the arrow pointing at my daughter's door? Find out all this time that we're in my daughter's house, protecting ourselves, because my daughter was going through some crazy stuff with a neighbor that lived right next door. The door was unlocked the whole time. So it, boom, it was like, so we went to the door, find out, oh my, all this time we thought that, and it might have been my fault because I went out and grabbed something in my car, came back, forgot to lock the door. So this is, as crazy as it sounds, this is how a spiritual awakening is. It's waking you up to understand your reality is not what you think. That's what this matrix is like. There's signs all over, like the numbers, animals and all this stuff, symbols, but it wakes you up to another level, of understanding of how this matrix works. Like I was explaining to somebody a few days ago, is that there's, my grandson, he's in, first they're toddlers, then they start learning how to walk, then they go to school, then they start in, like in kindergarten. Later on, they're in 7th grade, high school, college. Well, even after college, that's not where it stops. Everybody is at a different level of understanding. So you might think, hey, I know it all. I graduated, I went to high school, I went to college, I'm all this and I'm all that. You haven't even started yet, because there's so much more to learn all the way up until the time that God takes you out of here. So it's unlimited, learning, but there's people out there, they're closed-minded. They don't believe in this because they've been programmed not to. So I don't know, have you ever had any crazy ass shit going on, and like I said, there's been times I went on a spiritual awakening and I didn't do any drugs that day. The only thing I was doing around that time was marijuana, and I knew where it came from. I knew who was planting it and everything. I trusted those people. The person that was actually growing that marijuana didn't even smoke marijuana. That's the wise way of doing it those days when it was illegal, is that he wasn't smoking it, then you don't get stupid, doing something wrong and getting caught, So anyway, I love you so much, and I do have to get going because the library will be closing soon. But doctors will, the doctors are, not all doctors are, if you don't know this by now, I just heard a man the other day telling his story at a library. He's an old man, an older man, and going through a lot of stuff. So, there's a lot of wickedness going on. There's a lot of great stuff going on in the world. But, we're being lied to throughout the whole system, the school system, the doctors, the hospitals, all over, so we got to wake up. That's what it's about, is waking up and finding out really who you are, what, like that we are more than just, we are spirit beings having a human experience, but we're kings and queens. They've been trying to take your power away. They've been trying to keep you ignorant, keep you stupid, do this and do that, keep you distracted so you never find out who you are and find out what your purpose is. So anyway, I love you. This is Starlight, and I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you learn something. These topics are hard for people to leave a comment down below, but have you ever had anything, that, and I'm not talking about going on an LSD, when you go on LSD, hey, you get what you get. I'll tell you, I would never want to go on back into LSD again. But, some people say that actually wakes you up even more with your third eye and stuff like that. And I wouldn't doubt it, really. But, you might have never done drugs. Like, there's been times I've gone through a spiritual awakening. I wasn't high at the time. I wasn't doing marijuana, but wow. I have my stories on my YouTube. It's you gotta check out the playlist, the Spiritual Awakenings. So if you're brave enough to say, yes, I did have something crazy, Starlight, that happened to me, then you could send a message down below if you feel comfortable. And I love you all. You could give this video a thumbs up. You could subscribe to my YouTube channel. Plus, you could leave a message down below, beep, beep, beep. And you could follow my Instagram at 1995 Starlight, or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K, Dignan Starlight. You might have family that's been in a psych hospital. You might have family that you had to call 911 and didn't know what. You might have thought they were on drugs. They might have not been on any drugs. They were going through a spiritual awakening. The doctor's going to tell you what they want you to believe. Don't always trust all those doctors, because it's all a trick. I love you so much, and this is Starlight. Namaste. This is Starlight. Love, light, and peace.